You know, I thought Hutao was not coming this patch, but apparently she is. So it's time for another pre-release analysis. Let's take a look. Let's get started with the quick summary. I think Hutao individually is a 3 out of 5, and honestly I was thinking even maybe 2 out of 5 trending weak. But as a team, she's gonna be 4 out of 5, very strong, very decent. I think overall Hutao's kit is rather gimmicky and have a lot of problems, such as not being able to switch out during your elemental skill form, similar to Xiao or Razor. And I just think she has too much practical problem when played as a selfish individual carry. From the fact that her ICD on her normal attack, meaning that she can't properly melt or vaporize every single hit, to the downtime and not lining up cooldown with support such as Xingqiu or Kaya. And I think she's much better off playing a role similar to Xiao as a semi-support for your team. And let me explain the difference. So an individual meaning that you're playing Hutao as an individual carry similar to diluc Xingqiu comp. So for example, you put Hutao in this spot and the majority of the damage dealt by this team is going to be relied upon Hutao or diluc. Now a team composition means something like this, where every single member of the party is doing a portion of the damage. For example, here you have Fischl and Beidou and Tatalia all doing damage simultaneously, and this is how the firework child comp work. Anyway, let's dive deep into it, but before that, I want to share this picture with you guys about how exactly Hutao is feeling right now. So taking a look at Hutao's base stat to begin with, we noticed that she gets crit damage as her ascension stat, which is in line with other 5-star DPS characters such as diluc or Ganyu. But then two interesting thing is that her base attack is significantly lower than other 5-star character. Her base attack is about half of XiangLing and 3 times lower than diluc. But in trade-off, she gets a really high base HP, even higher than Zhongli. Now the primary reason of this stat allocation is of course because her elemental skill allow you to convert HP into attack percent, so you grant a huge amount of attack bonus during it. However, this also means that when you're not in your elemental skill form, you will be stuck with these very low base stat, and so your damage will be significantly lower. Moving on to her normal attack, it's basically identical as XiangLing's ratio, so there's not much to see here. Basically like very standard, very normal attack talent. Moving on to her elemental skill guide to Afterlife. I think this is of course the most interesting about her, so let's take a look. The first thing you notice of course is that her elemental skill provide attack increase based on a percentage of her maximum HP. And so this is significant because it means that building HP sands is always better. The second thing that it matters is that the base attack on your weapon actually matter less because of this. Meaning that something like the low base attack Dragon Bane might actually be attractive on her, while something like Deathmatch who increase attack percent is actually going to be less attractive on her. And even a 5-star weapon might not actually be that much better than a 4-star weapon, unless that your 5-star weapon also happens to scale with HP, which this one does. Anyway, the majority of your attack is actually going to come from the HP conversion. At 25,000 HP, you are approximately you're looking at like 1,500 attack-ish, and combine it with your 500 to 600 base attack from your base stat and your weapon, your total attack is going to be around 2,000 to 2,000, a bit more than 2,000, which is really good because unless you have really good gear, generally it is difficult to hit 2,000 attack. Hutao elemental skill also come with this Blood Blossom damage effect, which you can actually get it to tick 4 times if you play optimally by applying it once at the beginning and then it tick after 4 seconds and then applying it again just right before you leave the form of your elemental skill. You can basically just think of it as a Goba from XiangLing. In fact, they basically have identical damage. While Goba have higher scaling, Hutao have higher attack due to the conversion from her elemental skill, so they even out. Furthermore, undocumented on here is that during Hutao's elemental skill form, she can actually just phase through the enemy, meaning that when against an enemy with a shield, you can just directly walk into them or walk past them and then attack them from behind or within them. At this point, you might think Hutao's elemental skill is really stacked and is really strong. But I actually think it's the opposite. Hutao elemental skill is just okay. In fact, I would even dare to say rather a bit weaker than I expected. For example, we're just gonna start with the one we just described it. Being able to phase through enemy and attack through shield is necessary for Hutao to become relevant. This is because other characters all have a way to do with shield. Diluc and Klee can brute force over the shield with Diluc's Great Sword and Pyro element, and for Klee being Pyro and having her bomb charge attack also let her just destroy the shield. Ganyu, you can overcome the shield by doing freeze and attacking from behind. And of course for Xiao, your plunge attack absolutely demolish shield. If Hutao just get hard countered by shield, then she'll be a very weak character because everyone else can just deal with it. And so that is an example of a necessary in order to become relevant. And the biggest problem with Hutao elemental skill is of course child syndrome. Similar to Xiao or Razor, during your form, if you switch out of your character, you actually leave the form. So meaning you want to stay on your E elemental skill form as long as possible. Furthermore, even if you stay in the form for the full 9 seconds, because the skill have a 16-second cooldown, you are still gonna have downtime no matter what. Now the downtime is not that big of a deal because this is the opportunity for you to switch to your other character and cast their skill. But the biggest problem is that you have to run deployable for Hutao, and if you're either looking for melt or vaporize, your only choice are Xiao, Kaya, or potentially Ganyu. Now most people probably default to Xiao for a vaporize comp, however the problem with Xiao is your cooldown doesn't line up. Xiao's elemental bursts have a duration of 15 seconds while Hutao have 9. Meaning that you potentially have 6 seconds of not really utilizing the range counter as much. And most noticeably, the bigger problem is Xiao's cooldown is 20 seconds while Hutao is 16. Meaning that you cannot line up the cooldown perfectly, and so it's gonna be really annoying to play Hutao with Xiao. Then your option might be Ganyu, which have duration of 15 seconds and cooldown of 15 seconds, which line up perfectly with Hutao. But the problem with Ganyu is a 5-star character meant for a main DPS, so I think demoting her to a Hutao support is not actually an ideal scenario. And your other choice is of course Kaya, which also have 15-second cooldown and line up with Hutao and an 8-second duration, which is actually good enough since Hutao is only lasts for 9. The problem with Kaya is that his cryo application is kind of slow, and we're unsure if you can properly get melts off this way, so this will need further testing. And the biggest problem for Hutao is of course ICD, which stands for internal cooldown, meaning that you cannot actually melt or vaporize every single one of your attack, and then you loses a lot of value of those vaporize or melts combo. Now as for Diluc, his Searing Onslaught and his normal attack do not share ICD, and that's why you can vaporize and melt every single hit, at least during his elemental skill. For Hutao, she cannot do that, and so she loses so much value. So in compensation, they gave her higher attack to deal with the fact that she cannot melt or vape every single hit. But there's still a saving grace for this, because recently in the CM meta, a new Pure Pyro team, or PP for short, have been developing, which is basically just running 3 Pyro character and completely ignoring any kind of reaction, ignoring vaporize and ignoring melt. And it has been shown to mathematically be able to match vaporize, Diluc, or other. And so for Hutao, you could potentially just replace the Diluc here for Hutao and you have a PP Hutao team. Overall, I don't think that Hutao elemental skill is exceptionally broken. I just think it's very balanced. It is necessary for her to be relevant. But the bigger problem is that means outside of your elemental skill, you are completely worthless. Finally, we move on to Hutao elemental burst. At level 6, it does 400%, very similar to a lot of the other elemental bursts in the game. Not too high, not too low. There is this gimmick of being low HP and it do more damage, but personally I don't think that you can consistently pull this off because your elemental burst also regenerate your HP as well. and as well as Bennett being able to regenerate your HP mean it's harder for you to stay under 50%. Now, the thing is, using Bennett Elemental Burst will actually result in doing more damage than if you're trying to keep your HP under 50%. So, and that's why I say this is gimmicky. The only real use case I can see is sometimes maybe you can pull this off right after your elemental skill because it drains your 30% max HP, or you intentionally lower your HP in something like the Abyss Floor 12 Chamber 2, and then you do a one-shot combo in Abyss Floor 12 Chamber 3. Overall, there's not too much here. I just also want to make a final call out that you want to make sure to cast your elemental burst during your elemental skill, because again, outside of your elemental skill, your damage are significantly lower. So you're gonna cast your elemental burst no matter what HP threshold you're at before your elemental skill end. And then finally, we move on to the passive talent. I'm gonna actually start with the second one first. So when Hutao HP is lower than 50%, her pyro damage is increased by 33%. Again, this is a really nice damage boost, and it does boost your damage a significant amount, but I think being low HP is kind of gimmicky because it's unreliable, and because of your elemental burst regenerate you and stuff like Bennett will regenerate you. And it's definitely not worth you trying to keep your HP low on purpose and not cast the Bennett Elemental Burst or your own Elemental Burst, because either of those will result in doing more damage. So this, while it looked like a good amount of damage increase, I think practically it's actually just okay. Coming back to the second line of the passive talent, when Hutao's Elemental skill and you will grant 12% critical rate to the rest of your party member. And I think this is what makes Hutao going to be really strong, is being able to support and play in a team environment. For example, XiangLing or Xiao. Since those characters all have snapshotting, the 8-second duration don't matter, and 12% critical rate is not to be underestimated. For 2 party member, that's 24 in total. For 3 party member, that's 36. However, usually you only get 2 because Bennett is the last character and Bennett doesn't really do any damage. Nevertheless, even just at 24 critical rate for free, that is still a significant amount. Character like diluc is falling off meta in the Chinese community because diluc offer absolutely nothing back toward the team. However, this is not the case for Hutao, and that's why I think Hutao will have incredible potential when played correctly in a team environment. At last, let's quickly go over Constellation. Always, I feel like a C0 5-star should be a complete package. I feel like Constellation shouldn't really be a factor of their kit. But I know a lot of you are interested in their C6. A lot of you look like it's really strong because it gave 100% critical rate and prevent her from dying. But I actually just think this is kind of memey and it's kind of gimmicky. Realistically, this is actually completely useless because it's just once every 60 seconds. And so in actual combat, getting some buff once every 60 seconds is just not good enough for it to matter, especially at C6. It's only good for like one-shotting memeing or clickbait, but if you're gonna one-shot me with a C6 character, just do it with Xiao, just do it with Mona. You don't need to bring Hutao for that. So I actually think this is completely useless. There's no point of it at all. As a final thought, I have described it in the beginning of the video. I feel like Hutao as an individual carry is going to be really bad for Melts or for Vaporize just because she's not really compatible with it. So I initially thought Hutao was going to be bad as well. But then with the new Chinese meta discovery of the Pure Pyro team, the PP team, I feel like Hutao slot perfectly into that. And with recently how Beidou and Xiao are rising in the Chinese meta because they are overall just so good, I think Hutao being a team leader would be really good actually, meaning that you use Hutao similar as a method to Xiao where you just contribute together with your team. So that's it for Hutao, and let's quickly review our Xiao pre-release analysis to see what we got right, what we got wrong. Overall, I think majority of these are right because Xiao is rather simple as a character. He does very good damage, very similar to Ganyu Charge Shot. But he did suffer from energy problem or a bit of support problem like underutilizing stuff like Xingshu or Xiao. While he did have some energy problem, it's not as big as I thought, especially since that I thought he would be really bad at 70 energy, but they didn't buff it and it turned out to be fine. If you just bring something like a Sucrose or maybe Jean as a enamel battery and build some energy recharge on him. Overall, I think that he is still 3 out of 5. A very average, a very balanced character. He has clear strength, has clear weakness. That's it for this video. If you're still watching until here, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I think Hutao will be a very interesting release, so let's see what happens when she gets released on Tuesday this week. See you guys next time.